Good afternoon. My name is Sam Phillips, and this is my lesson plan implementation for Edse 634, dealing with assistive technology. Before I'm going to get going with my lesson, I wanted to show you some of the things that are written up on the board because you wouldn't be able to see them probably from where the camera is going to be seated in order to get the kind of full picture. Up here in the corner is my I can statement, or my learning target, and it states that I can compare and contrast the book and movie The Diary of Anne Frank. Down here in the red you see that I have today's materials, the notebook, paper or digital. Some kids are going to have iPads. That's going to be an optional thing. Audio book or the book, The Diary of Anne Frank. You're going to need your iPad. Once again, that's optional if you want to listen to the book or if you want to have it read to you out loud, or perhaps if you want to DVR and record your own voice and the thoughts that you're having. Also, I go through in the beginning of class with my planner, letting the kids know exactly what's going to be expected of them of the day, and they're to write that in their planner. Some of them have their planners built into the iPad. And then also on the bottom there it says write out loud or Dragon speaking naturally, depending on whether the student's using an iPad or a laptop. That would be a system built for them to be able to speak, and it does the typing for them. Over here you have today's agenda. So it's going through the example clip and the Venn diagram, class diagram, review of Anne Frank notes, create the diagrams, and then class share. And then in the middle of the board here is a Venn diagram itself, and just a reference for the students to know when we go over the example one. Alrighty, in the beginning of class, shortly after I go through the materials, I would, and before I go over the agenda, I would ask Ty, my focus student, to get out his planner, especially, and not everybody get out their planners, but I would make sure that they put the today's events and the due dates and things like that into their planner. Ty's would be on his iPad, which would be a routine that we would have already built up in class. Alright, good morning class. Thank you guys. Hopefully you've had a good day so far. Today we're going to pick right up where we left off the last few days. For about the last week or two, we've been working with the story The Diary of Anne Frank, and there's a purpose behind that. I want you to learn more than just the history. We're going to be comparing and contrasting the book and the movie The Diary of Anne Frank. So far we've watched the video. Okay, some of you guys have watched it on your iPads independently. Some of you guys have watched it just as the class. And then we've also read the book The Diary of Anne Frank. And once again, different options for different people. Some of you guys have actually read the hard copy book, which we have right here. Others have listened to it on audiobook and had it read to them. Both of those options are just as good, and I don't mind either one. For class today, you're going to need your notebook. That can be either your paper or your digital notebook, the stuff that you wrote down in your iPad for notes on comparing the differences and similarities between the movie and the book. You're going to need your audiobook or your book, depending on which one you used, because you're going to want to reference back so you have good detailed information. Next, you're going to want your iPad. It's optional to have it. I know some of you guys really depend on it, and some of you guys like to have it, whether it's for keeping your planner in there or for your DVR, your digital voice recording, or doing audiobooks, or any number of things that you can come up with. Maybe you're using like Write Out Loud or Dragon Speaking Naturally to have it typed out for you. Okay? Alrighty, well let's get started with everything today. If you look over here at the agenda, you see that we're going to do an example, a clip, and a Venn diagram, and then we're going to create a class diagram of a comparing and contrasting of a movie and a book. And we're just going to do a small section because I want you guys to have a good example of how to do this, and also for you to become familiar with the tools that you have to work with, whether it's your iPad and the Dragon reading, speaking naturally, or whether it's the DVR or any of those things. And remember to use those tools because they're there for you, and I'll be here to help you no matter what. So what we're going to do first is we're going to watch the example clip and then create work on our first Venn diagram. Now at this point in time in class, what I would do is I would play for the students a brief clip of the movie The Boy in Striped Pajamas. And the movie The Boy in Striped Pajamas and the book differ quite a lot at the end of the movie and book. One tells a story and it kind of abruptly ends. The other one goes into the father discovering that the young man had snuck through the fence and ended up being burned alive in the crematoriums. But anyway, so I would show this video to the students, and while watching that, I would ask them to take down anything that they notice that seems to stand out, okay? And then at that point, right after, I would grab my book copy of The Boy in Striped Pajamas, and I would read for them the last chapter. It'll take me maybe 5 to 10 minutes, but while I'm doing that, I'm going to have the students take down differences that they notice and similarities between the book and the end of the movie. Well, after I would be done reading the book to the students, while I'm reading, they're going to be writing down those ideas, as I stated earlier. Some of them might be writing them on their iPad digitally. Some might be DVR, recording some things quietly to themselves, some ideas that popped into their head. And I have no problem with that, because I would have built that type of relationship with the students ahead of time. And they would have, sometimes what I would have had the students done is maybe write down a brief little idea that would remind them of something bigger, and then they could record it on the DVR, and that's just fine as well. But anyways, the students would have written down their ideas on the differences between the video and the book, The Boy in Striped Pajamas at the end there, and then I would have had the students throw out some various ideas. What are some similarities that you came up with? And then I would model for them where you put the similarities between the book and the video. Always putting the similarities where the two circles intersect, obviously, because that shows that they have something in common. And then on the outsides, you put the differences, but you try to make sure that the differences match up with something that was a direct correlation to the other. Like, for example, the difference from the book was that the boy's fate was unknown at the end. It was assumed that he was dead, but it was unknown. But in the movie, the boy dies in the crematorium at the end, so very much related to one another. We would go through this as a class, and we would write down their ideas, and then I would leave this up here for an example for them to base their ideas off of, and how they create their Venn diagrams when they do theirs on Anne Frank, the video, and the movie. Okay. All right, class. Well, thank you guys very much for your efforts on the Venn diagram. The first one that we created, our example on the Boy in Striped Pajamas. I'm going to leave this up there for you today, like I said, for an example for you guys to reference back, to be able to look to for maybe ideas or inspiration, or just maybe some organizational traits when you're creating yours on the book and movie of Anne Frank. Okay. What I'd like you to do now is get out your notes that you've taken from the Diary of Anne Frank. Most of you guys probably created them on a T-chart, looking something similar to this, where you had your T, and then on one side you had the sim, and then the other side you had your differences. And that's just fine. Okay, some of you guys had your notes on the iPads. Some of you guys perhaps maybe wrote them down by hand. Maybe others recorded them digitally, and that's just fine as well. But I'd like you to get those out at this moment. All right, class. What I would like you to do next is I'd like you to meet up with your 4 o'clock partner. Okay? And at this point in time, what the students would do is they would get out their little chart that we created earlier in the year, where they had partners that they chose, and their 4 o'clock partner, whoever that may be, they would meet up with. And then I would have the students compare and contrast their notes. And as I said, or as I would say to the students, I would say, you know what, guys, I want you to come up with 10 solid similarities and differences. Now, I know that would be a really big struggle for a lot of the students in my class to come up with 10 solid similarities and differences. However, my real goal is for them to have 5 in the end. So I want them to shoot high, but then I want them to really refine and come down with the 5 strongest that they can come up with in the end, and they will try to be the most detailed and well-written similarities and differences that they can do. And hopefully between the 2 partners, their 4 o'clock partners, they'll be able to do that. Alright guys, you did a great job with your partners. Alright, but what I would like you to do now is I'd like you to all head back to your desks, okay? Now at this point they would all go back to their desks, and I would then give the students the direction to say, you know, I understand, guys, you came up with the best list you can. Some of you maybe got to 10, some of you didn't. But what I want you to do from that 10 is I want you to refine that list to the best of your ability. I want you to come up with 5 similarities and 5 differences from the book and the video, okay? Now with this, I would stress that they're very detailed about this, and that they do their best, and that they write really solid information with the best complete sentences that they can. I would also let them know that those of the students that want to use the iPad, they can use their iPads. I would have already uploaded a Venn diagram or some type of Venn diagram software to their computer or to their iPad to do that with. Some students are going to use maybe pencil and paper the old-fashioned way, and that's just fine as well. I would have a handout available for them. So as I was saying, the students would have the ability to use all the technology they would need. They would have the book available for them if they wanted, the audio book for reviewing, and I would stress to them, remember, you can look back at your notes, remember, you can look back into the book or listen back into the book. Use the iPad to go back and look at YouTube videos of Anne Frank, the movie, and so on, so you could really lock down those similarities and differences. Some students would probably do the old-fashioned way, as I mentioned. Others might go so far as to do everything on the iPad, whether it's through the DVR or the write out loud, and then they would fill in the Venn diagram quite thoroughly. what I would be doing then, and actually throughout the entire class, is I'd be walking around trying to help the students, guide them, correct them, give them positive feedback to help them create the best Venn diagram that they can. Once everyone in the class has completed their Venn diagram, and this is probably a couple of day lesson with the students that I have in mind, but once everybody has completed their Venn diagram, I would then take the opportunity to have the students share their Venn diagrams with the class to give them the opportunity to, and they could read them off their iPads, show the visuals up on the class, but it would give them something to be proud of, also give the other students an opportunity to work on their listening skills and how to be polite. Thank you for watching my lesson. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Throughout that lesson I would have been assessing things such as how they did on the first Venn diagram, how they were doing with their partners, and how they're continuing to work.